Okay, so it's June 22nd, and here's some news stories. June 22nd, 2012. It's my mother's birthday, so happy birthday, Mom. 50, 51 years old. Born in 61, same year as Obama. So June 22nd, 2012. And there's like, I got 7 articles here. Okay, so the first article is about the Louisville Metro Council. It passed a $514 million budget after having a disagreement about Whiskey Row. The Metro Council passes a $514 million plan, and it reaches a deal to give $500,000 to Whiskey Row. So they did give money to Whiskey Row after they had already given them $1.5 million in a forgivable loan. So the disagreement from some of the council members, such as Republican council member Kelly Downard, Kelly Downard called the subsidy a bailout for Wilson and his development team, who announced earlier that year that the cost of the Whiskey Row project had tripled to about $7 million. So Kelly says these are wealthy, well-connected people who made a bad investment. Now they want the taxpayers to bail them out, and I'm offended, Downard said. Republican Jerry Miller called it a power grab and a ruse. The developers, he said, wanted a do-over. Democrat Mary Woolridge said with $500,000 she could redevelop almost every rundown property in her West Louisville district. That's a lot of money, $500,000. The debate caused Downard and fellow Republicans Kevin Cramer, Ken Fleming, Jerry Miller, and Robin Engel to vote against the capital project's portion of the budget. Despite that disagreement, there is relatively little contention over the rest of the budget. The Metro Council, for the first time in years, did not add any projected revenue to the budget, but it found an additional roughly $2 million by moving $1.5 million from an undesignated projects account to the general fund. Then demanded the administration renegotiate the sale price of 2 parking garages to the Parking Authority of River City, which resulted in $300,000 of additional revenue. So that's a budget. Louisville's got a $500,000 budget, and they give a $500 million budget overall, and then they give $500,000 for the developers of Whiskey Row. And the developers of Whiskey Row, there's an actual guy's name. Yeah, I don't know. Steve Wilson. So $500,000 is going to go to the wealthy developer Steve Wilson. So Steve Wilson got a bailout from the public taxpayers with the recent Louisville budget that was passed. Let's see, Louisville, Kentucky. This is from WDRB.com. Former Kentucky fire chief pleads guilty in court. From the AP. Says a former fire district chief pleaded guilty in a federal court in Louisville to money laundering and mail and wire fraud for taking money intended for a children's charity and using it to pay for vacations, taxes on vehicles, and a condo in Florida. The Courier-Journal reported that Paul Barth pleaded guilty on Thursday afternoon to 15 total counts and is expected to be sentenced in October to 3 years and 5 months in federal prison as a part of his plea deal. He also expected to pay restitution of $190,000 to the WHAS Crusade for Children and another $8,277 to the McMahon Fire District. David Hale, U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Kentucky, said that Paul Barth held positions of trust in the community, and he violated that trust. So a former fire district chief. So a former fire chief was embezzling money, and now he's going to a federal prison for 3.5 years. He was supposed to be taking money for a children's charity, and he spent it on vacations and to pay his taxes on his vehicle and to pay for a condo in Florida. So another public official in Kentucky embezzling funds. A huge development in Appalachia. Arch Coal is laying off 750 workers in Appalachia. So 750 workers are going to lose their jobs because of Arch Coal. One of the world's largest coal producers said Thursday it was going to lay off 750 workers in Kentucky, Virginia, and West Virginia coal fields, which is the latest setback for an industry struggling to sustain market share as utilities switch to cleaner and cheaper alternatives to generate electricity. The bulk of the cuts by Arch Coal Incorporated, almost 600 of them, are in Kentucky. So most of the jobs that are lost are Kentucky jobs. The disappearance of high-paying mining work heightened anxiety in hard-scrabble Kentucky towns, where officials worried declining demand for coal would result in leaner budgets and more people on unemployment rolls. This is in Bloomberg Business Week. It's an article by Bruce Schreiner. So more people are losing their jobs in Eastern Kentucky. The judge executive of Perry County, Dennis Ray Noble, he says that this is just a start. He thinks he is expecting it to get worse. He's estimated that that he's lost in Perry County 30% of its mining jobs in just the last year alone, and the unemployment rate in Perry County is 12.4%, which is the official unemployment rate, which doesn't that only counts the people that actually file for unemployment. So it doesn't cover all of them. 12.4% is the least amount of people that are unemployed in Perry County. Arch Coal Incorporated is a St. Louis-based company, and it said that its subsidiaries would close 3 higher-cost mining complexes and associated preparation plants, 2 in Kentucky and 1 in West Virginia. It will temporarily idle another complex in Kentucky and curtail production at other facilities in 3 states. The company accounted for 16% of the coal production in the U.S. in 2010. The layoffs come amid forecasts that the share of U.S. electricity coming from coal will fall below 40% for the year, the lowest level since the government began collecting data in 1949. 4 years ago, it was 50%. By the end of this decade, it will likely be near 30%. So coal is going out the window, not because of any of the regulations, which are common sense regulations, but because coal is a dirty industry. So there's a lot of pollution that comes out of it, and you can get cheaper energy from natural gas. So Eve said that the company regrets the impact on its employees and their families and communities, but said that the decision was necessary to weather the current downturn and to position the company for long-term success. And actually, the cuts does not change Arch Coal outlook. So they're going to keep on making money. Arch Coal will be all right. Arch Coal Incorporated will continue to do all right. The CEOs, at least, the people in the oppressor class, but the 600 people who are now jobless, they're going to have to figure out something else. Find another decent job in a poverty-stricken town that already has a high unemployment rate. So Arch Coal said that the reductions would trim its thermal coal production by more than 3 million tons annually. It said it continues to expect thermal coal sales volume in the range of 128 million to 134 million tons for 2012. Meanwhile, the company says it's putting more emphasis on higher margin metallurgical coal operations in the region. The job losses come as utilities increasingly switch from coal to natural gas, which has become cheaper as supplies grow. Natural gas advantages over coal includes producing fewer emissions of toxic chemicals and gases that contribute to climate change. From Kentucky courthouses to Congress, officials were blaming the tougher environmental rules for Kentucky woes and resulting job losses. Knott County Judge Executive Randy Thompson, he said about 250 jobs will be lost from his county, which had a 12.5% jobless rate in May. Meanwhile, coal severance tax revenues are dwindling, putting more strain on the local budget to keep up with the demand for services. So, several of the Republicans were blaming Obama, which that's all that they know how to do. They don't know how to actually pass any laws or get the job done. They just want Obama, all of his policies to fail, so that way the economy fails and they can blame the economy on the president, which has been their tactic from day one, which is Mitch McConnell, motherfucking Kentucky. That's what Kentucky represents. So, a pair of clean air rules enacted by the EPA over the past years tightened limits on power plant emissions of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, and it placed new limits on mercury, which is a poison that's found in coal. Because of these regulations, it'll force between 32 and 68 of the dirtiest and oldest coal plants in the country to close over the next 3 years as the rules go into effect, according to an AP survey of power plant operators conducted late last year. In what could be an even bigger environmental blow to coal, the EPA in March issued guidelines that could limit greenhouse gas emissions from new power plants. Robert Keeley, an environmental lawyer in Berea, Kentucky, said that it's ridiculous to blame environmental regulations for the coal industry struggles. He says that the rules are completely reasonable and that they have been decades in the making and are a moral no-brainer. The fact is that cheap coal in Central Appalachia has been mined out. That's a fiscal fact. And there's no politician who can change that or scapegoat anybody. Remaining coal supplies tend to be more expensive to extract and aren't as profitable, he says. Central Appalachia would be experiencing almost as much decline in coal mining even if we had the most anti-environmental president of our history in place. The EPA said in a statement that coal is still expected to generate more of the country's electricity than any other fuel source. It pointed to low natural gas prices, low electricity demands, and rising coal prices as factors in reducing demand. Market conditions in the power sector are driving business decisions that are completely independent from these long overdue toxic pollution standards, which power plants do not need to meet until 2016. So they got 4 years to meet these new regulations that's choking the coal industry. It's not the EPA, it's the coal company itself. They want to make a ton of money and they don't give a damn about the working class people. So the best thing for a company, at least that's what Arc Coal out of St. Louis is saying, the best thing for Arc Coal is to fire a bunch of the wage slaves, get rid of that labor cost, get more mechanization, and continue to profit. They actually were mining more coal. They expect to mine more coal in the coming years. So the production is still high. They're still mining the coal out of the hills of Kentucky. Only they're giving less working class people part of those profits. So instead, all the profits are going to the St. Louis corporate headquarters. There was a judge that reinstated a whistleblowing Kentucky miner. Arch Coal's subsidiary was fined $30,000. In Louisville, a judge has ruled that an Eastern Kentucky miner with a history of whistleblowing activities should get his job back, and that the coal company that fired him should pay a $30,000 fine for dismissing him and for discriminatory practices. Administrative law judge Margaret A. Miller concluded last week that Cumberland River Coal Company, which is a subsidiary of Arch Coal, which has fired 600 Kentuckians, concluded last week that Cumberland River Coal Company improperly fired Charles Scott Howard, 52, of Letcher County in May 2011 after he was injured on the job 10 months earlier. Miller concluded in a 12-page decision that Cumberland River Coal and his parent company, Arch Coal, went to great lengths to justify dismissing Howard after he alerted federal office officials about his mine. Howard challenged the dismissal, saying Cumberland River Coal and Arch Coal dismissed him because he had publicized safety issues in the mines. In court papers, Cumberland Coal and Arch Coal denied that allegation. Howard has a history of whistleblowing activities involving coal mines. Judges reinstated him to his job at least twice before, including in August 2010 in a separate case involving Cumberland River and Arch Coal. It's obvious that CRCC worked diligently to end Howard's employment. The latest issue arose when Howard was injured while working alone in June 2010. A number of doctors treated him, and most cleared him to return to work. With doctors working for the coal company suggesting work restrictions for Howard. The mine waited until every doctor, including two neurosurgeons, 2 eye doctors, a psychiatrist, and others, found no impairment and agreed that Howard could return to work. So Howard's whistleblowing activity started in March 2007 when he testified before a congressional committee about mine safety. In April 2007, Howard made a video of leaking mine seals, which drew the attention of Cumberland River Coal and Arch executives. Howard challenged a reprimand issued by the company, as well as 4 discrimination complaints against his employer. Howard sued Cumberland River Coal in May 2011 over safety issues, not long before he was fired. U.S. District Judge Amal R. Thapar dismissed the suit in December, saying Howard waited too long to file the suit. The last thing, Kentucky State signs a green agreement with the EPA. So Kentucky State is going to have new green jobs for more graduates. in environmental careers at Kentucky State University.